Hey, everybody, this is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today, we're talking with Hannah Tackett, former tech leader on the fast track who struggled with and overcame career halting burnout, understanding the personal and professional struggles that come from pressure to be the best at everything in life. She now guides others to reclaim control and balance. So she's a software design manager turned burnout coach for women. I think this is a super important topic for many entrepreneurs because I know we all live the daily challenges that brings. So, with that, welcome, Hannah, and thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this because I know so many high achievers that don't even realize that they're on the path to burnout until it's too late.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we start doing what we're doing it based on passion or something we love, but we don't take the time to look up and sort of see, this is too much and it's too all consuming. So I know you're going to be sharing some amazing tips with us, but I just wanted to start off with your own personal story and your own personal background because I think it's something that many of us can relate to. So can you share with us what's been your career path and what led you to where you are now?
Absolutely. So you mentioned I was in tech for 16 years, and around the, I don't know, 12-year mark, I burnt out terribly. I couldn't get out of bed for months, and it scared me, right? It was a big wake up call or like one of those pivotal moments in your life because I had burnt out previously in my life. Like I'd worked myself to the point of being sick multiple times. The difference this time was that I had more on the line. I had two babies to take care of.
Right.
I had worked very hard to get into this career, and I wasn't willing just to let it fall apart because I couldn't get out of bed. Married, I wanted to show up for my life. I built this amazing life and I wanted to be there for it, and I wasn't able to. And so I made it my highest priority to turn that around, to end the burnout, make sure it never happened again. And then on that path to ending burnout and, all the learning, all the studying, all the certifications that I was getting to make sure that I fully understood it and make sure it just never going to happen again in my life. I met so many women at conferences, in the tech world and in various places, in my life who were also struggling with burnout or who had experienced it at some point in their journey. And I realized, oh, this is a big problem. This is not just a me thing. This is huge. And the more I looked into it, the more I was like, oh, okay, the data says 70% of people, that's 7 out of 10, are feeling the weight of stress and burnout right now. And so I thought, okay, I need to take what I've learned and start helping others and help others accelerate the path to healing so they don't have to go through the struggle and the journey that I went through, like shorten the path, make it easier.
Yeah, I mean, that's powerful. And I think one of the things you hit on that's really crucial is it's different if the stakes for you are if this doesn't work out, I can live on my parents' couch. If the stakes for
Yeah.
you are, I've got a family, I've got a mortgage, I've got car payments, I've got a spouse, I've got kids.
Yeah.
I know I'm in the software industry, or that's my background myself. I was creating apps and marketing them, and I remember some of the guys in my industry would say after they had achieved a certain level of success, I don't know how people that with parents, that are parents and that have families and everything do this. I mean,
Right.
I'm a single person, I'm young, I have unlimited energy, unlimited time, and ultimately I have a fallback plan because if this doesn't work, I can go do something else. But when the
Mhm.
stakes are a lot higher, I think that just amplifies the pressure. And that can help us, or force us to crack even faster or even worse. So I think that's a really salient point. So once you realized that you had this issue, how did you discover how to solve the problem? I'm just curious if was there a process that you followed? Was it something sort of accidental when you were looking for things, or what was your sort of epiphany or moment where you sort of got on that path?
I think it was a series of epiphanies. I didn't find a guide necessarily, like a straight path to ending it. It took years of research and effort for me to turn that around, to turn my health around, to regain my energy. And what I've discovered though in the process, like, okay, it took me a long time, but I can help others do it much faster, because what I discovered in the process is that the key to ending burnout is authenticity. And that doesn't sound necessarily intuitive. You would think, oh, it should be like going to the spa, or taking longer vacations, maybe take a sabbatical, or maybe, meditate a lot. And so those things are great at managing stress, and that's a big part of preventing burnout. But the biggest factor that drives people to burnout is living outside of integrity with your own values. We can get into that. We can talk about the 5 success traps that like drive people to burnout. But yeah, so it really is that key of prioritizing yourself, getting to know your own values, rediscovering them if you've lost them along the way, and then making space for what matters to you.
I think the authenticity, I've actually said, I believe that the next sort of evolution that we're heading into is the authenticity age. And it's ironic because of the fact that you have AI that's now creating ubiquitous content everywhere. But the interesting thing about it is that you look at some of these social media stars, right? And they're very young. And you would think you've got this following, you're making all this money, like you've already reached the mountaintop. Some of these kids aren't even 20 years old yet. And you think, they've got to be over the moon, happy and excited. And they're depressed. They're, getting, addicted to drugs. Some of them are suicidal. It's tragic. But I think what you hit on there is really important, because I think part of that is, if what you're doing is putting on a show, if you've developed a persona, it's exhausting to try to continue to keep that up. And there's a divergence between who you are and who you're pretending to be. Quick little anecdote. So I know somebody who knows somebody who has a very, very popular YouTube channel, and the whole family is involved in it. So it's parents and kids and everything else. And they're successful, they're happy and all that. But the interesting thing is, when the girl in the family had a boyfriend, the rules were they weren't allowed to post any images, any videos, anything with her in it, because they had an image based on their YouTube channel that they were terrified that if anything shattered that image, it would ruin their income stream, which you can understand from a financial and business standpoint, but it's like a prison. You've created this, you've created this income stream or whatever else, but at the same time, you're sort of trapped in there because you can't just be yourself. And so I think that's a really good point, and I want to definitely dig into that. So I think that there are people out there that are stressed in their jobs, stressed in their daily life, and obviously stress is normal and to be expected, but are there particular signs or symptoms that we should be looking for if we know we're at an unhealthy level?
Absolutely. And like you said, stress is normal. Stress can actually be healthy. If it's stress that is a stress because you're growing, right? You're trying something new, so you're nervous about it. That's a good stress. You're in the gym and you're, working out your muscles and they're sore. That's a good stress. Where stress becomes destructive is when it is chronic and unmanaged. And so what that ends up looking like, and I think of it in like stages, right? So there's this first stage of burnout, which is like that stealthy stress where you're beginning to feel irritable, anxious. Maybe you're struggling with some insomnia or tummy troubles, headaches. Maybe you're struggling with some poor concentration. And then if the source of that, if the stress is not managed, if the source of the stress is not managed, that can easily turn into like the stage 2. And this is really where I think it's ideal to catch burnout, is the second stage here, because that's when that emotional erosion starts to take place. And so you start to feel cynical. You start to have dread, and you experience those Sunday scaries. I remember when I was working in tech, I would have my Sunday scaries would start on Friday 3 p.m. I knew I had to come back on Monday, and I felt like my soul was just being dropped out of my body because I knew I had to come back. So, feeling detached, feeling like work is like this endless hamster wheel grind, feeling resentful, and having fantasies of quitting. So that's that second stage. If you're feeling any of those things, it is time to make some changes, because what you don't want to happen is that third stage. And that's where maybe think of it as like a performance paralysis. And this can appear, it appeared in my life as maybe health
Okay.
struggles. Like I was in bed and couldn't get up for months. I've talked to women who ended up in the ER. I've talked to women who their performance, it was a little bit more subtle, but still destructive, where they were struggling with their performance at work and getting put on performance analysis and reviews, where previously they had been top performers their entire career,
Right.
and they couldn't recover. So it can range from flat on your back, can't get up, to just not being able to show up to work like you used to. And so you don't want to get to that point, because once you are at that point, like, it does take a little bit longer to recover because your body has to recover. You're physically exhausted. So yeah, I mean, I think if you're starting to feel that resentment, that's the time. That's when
Okay.
you're like, oh, this is more than stress. This
Okay.
is cumulative stress over probably years at this point, and I need to turn it around before I get sick and my body forces me to turn it around.
And I'd imagine there's an element too where it's got to be a little confusing because if you're used to doing really, really well, and then all of a sudden you're not, and you can't figure out why. I mean, I don't understand. Like, if I was able to do this before, performing so well, why is it that now I'm struggling to be motivated? I can't get out of bed. Like, so I imagine that can make the problem worse because then we start feeling bad about ourselves for feeling bad, when in reality, there might be something else going on where we have to solve the problem some another way.
Right. And that's why that when it hits your performance, it's so critical to deal with it, because when your performance is hit, it affects your confidence. And you know how important confidence is. Like, if you don't have the confidence to show up and do your job, to go out and get a better job, like maybe you need to change your circumstances, but you've lost your confidence.
Yeah.
That's tragic and completely unnecessary, because it's not like you're not actually failing, even though maybe it looks like it is on the outside. It's not. It's fixable. This is a temporary situation that can be changed and turned around and fixed and prevented.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Is we sometimes get so stuck in the moment of what we're doing, we can't remember back to when things were good, or figure out how to solve the problem unless we step back from it. So, if we feel like we're struggling with stress and or burnout, what should we do?
I think that, well, the first thing is to pursue your yes. So I've got like this 5 steps that I have people go
Yeah, tell us
through,
about
and
that.
yeah, so I call it like the peace method, right? So peace, pursue your yes. So step into authenticity, get really clear on what matters to you now in this season of life. Ditch all the shoulds, ditch all the expectations that have been piling up, and make space for what matters to you. And then energize your being is the next step. And that would be, the basics of self-care that oftentimes we ignore, we push down, we deprioritize because everything else is more important,
Yeah.
right? And that'd be, eat for energy, improve your sleep, connect with loved ones, have joyful movement in your life, reset your nervous system, and release trauma. And then the third step is asserting your voice. And this is so critical for so many of the women that I work with. And this is where we learn how to ask for what you want and get it,
Okay.
learn the ways to say no, and gain confidence in saying in honoring your no, and addressing sabotage. And then the fourth is to claim your surplus, focus on that new energy that you have and what matters to you, and then use that to, last step, elevate your success. And that's where you go after what your big dreams, your next step, your big change that you want to make in your life, and, make that pivot happen.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's great. And the funny thing is, when we're in that moment or we're in that state where we're feeling we don't have the time, that's often the time where we need to go get out and do the workout. We need to do the
Mm-hmm.
thing that helps recharge us, because it's in those very moments where we need it the most, but we feel like we can't do it the most. And so, sort of ironic, I guess, in that way. But if we recognize that and realize, hey, if we come back and we have a higher level of productivity, or we're better off at what we're doing, then we're going to ultimately go beyond where we would have if we just tried to force our way through it and be a tough person,
Right.
trying to muscle through it all. So within that framework, I know
Mhm.
you talk about the difference between boundaries and balance. What is the difference, and why does that matter?
Oh my goodness. So I used to hate the word balance because I would imagine those like stock photos of the mom with like the briefcase of the baby and like things are flying all around her. And I'm like, who the hell wants that? In there, I don't want that. That's not what I want my life to look like. And I danced when I was younger, and so I would think also like how much work it is to actually balance. Like you're engaging your core muscles, everything is activated. Balance is hard work.
Yeah.
So when people would say work-life balance, I was like, no, thank you. And then more recently, I kind of found a new meaning for that word in that balance is more about a rhythm or a cycle. So we lean in, but we also need to lean out with as much intention. So kind of like, you have active hours during the day and hours where you sleep. We need to have hours where we're on and hours when we're off. So, and kind of creating that rhythm and that cycle in your life to allow for the rest, to celebrate the rest as a part of productivity. Because productivity, like we have this myth that productivity is linear, and it's not. Human productivity is not linear. It's more like a tide. It ebbs and it flows,
Yeah.
and we need to make space for that tide in our life. Make space for that, the white space that we need to be able to continue to be productive. Because if we just keep going on and on and on, we'll start losing that productivity. We'll lose the edge. We'll lose the enthusiasm.
I think that's the tide analogy is awesome because I think, for me, I recognize in my own biorhythm, in the morning, I tend to be really good, and then I have a period of time where I find it harder to focus. Even if I haven't worked all day, it doesn't matter. It's literally the time of day. There's a segment of hours in the middle of the day where I'm not at my peak, and in the evening, I tend to also get very good at being focused and working well. And I think sort of understanding that whether it's a physical like time or whatever it is about your own rhythm, when you need to step back, when you need to say, okay, I've got to go disengage and go do something else and then come back to this and I'll be better off with that. I think, obviously makes a lot of sense. And I think just understanding how and when we work best. So can you share with us some of the boundaries that you set so we could just get some kind of ideas for what we can do for ourselves?
Absolutely. So when I was still, full time in the tech world, one of the things that I realized was, okay, my value system. I wanted to be available for my babies, my young children, between the hours of I think it was like 5 and 7, or more like 5 and 8 p.m. Or 4:30 to 8 p.m. really, because that was like the pickup, the dinner time, the one-on-one time. It was that precious, those precious hours of the day because they fell asleep at 7,
Yeah.
7:30. So I'm like, I need to be there for these hours, uninterrupted, without distraction. And you know how it is. Like I have people in India that I work with, people in Europe that I work with. The time zones are all over the place. So what I did was I went to my boss and it was like, these hours are sacred to me. I would like to, turn down meetings with confidence because I need to be able to spend time with my children. I'm very flexible. You want to book a 6 a.m., 7 a.m., I'm fine with that. That doesn't bother me at all. I'll be there. 8 p.m., don't love it. I'll show up. Uh, but I was like, these are the hours that no compromise, right? Or like very little, minimal compromise. These are my boundaries. And when I went in, I was like, I'm going to get pushback. I'm going to get slack because I'm a mom, all this stuff. Nothing. They were like, okay, great. No
Wow.
problem.
Wow.
I'm like, fantastic.
I think sometimes we assume everyone expects us to be machines also.
Mm,
I was reading some article online. I think there was something went viral about somebody who had said, "I'm taking a mental health day. I'm not doing anything else. I'm literally just taking a day off because I need to recharge my batteries and all that." And the CEO commented and said, "We need more people to do this like you or whatever." And I don't remember the company or the person or whatever, but it
mhm,
stuck out in my mind because they're setting the example that not only is it okay, but it's normal. We
mhm.
aren't machines, and if we don't take time to take care of ourselves, then we break down like a machine would if we run it 24/7. Um,
Exactly.
I know, when I was starting off my entrepreneurial journey, I was passionate, I was excited, but I also was working 16 hours a day. And I got to a point where I said, look, this is okay short term because I'm trying to build something, but it's not sustainable. I have to find a way where I can get this down to an amount of work that is manageable, where I have some boundaries in terms of what I'm trying to do here. And so, for me, it was conscious, and I was able to do that, thankfully. But I'm curious, what would you say to people who are listening and they might think, okay, so I realize that the structure in my life is unhealthy, but I'm just too busy to make any changes or make time for the things that I do care about. So how can we create that space in our life for stuff that matters?
The first step, like I said, is getting clear on what your yes is. And once we know what we're saying yes to, it becomes easier to say no to the things that are noise, to the things that aren't moving us in that direction. So that really is like the first step. And then the second thing is maybe a mindset shift. I know I definitely had the mentality that to be busy was good, right?
Yeah.
Like busy is a badge of honor, or you have to be busy to be worthy. And so I think just taking a step back and realizing like busy is not the same as productive. You don't get a badge of honor for being busy, and you're worthy because you are, not because you're busy. So realizing like you don't have to be busy to be successful. So like the mindset shift, and then making sure that you're making space for your why and making space in your life. Like I think of things in sprints, but not like we do in software where there's a sprint and then another sprint and then another sprint and it never ends. But more like, okay, say you want to accomplish something in a quarter. So you do a 1 month accelerated push and then 2 months manageable. And just like cycle it through. So always think in terms of push and then let off, push and then let off. And then also I have a cheat sheet for folks. It's how to cut your hours by 20% without, while still being seen as a top performer or having, any negative impact to your business or your life. And it kind of goes into these principles that we've discussed, but like deeper with like more action steps. And then sometimes like the principles themselves are super simple.
Right.
But the execution,
Yeah.
When we go to make these changes in our lives, we oftentimes like run into self-sabotage, right? Because we're making changes and, our critter brain kicks in and is like, don't change anything. We feel safe this way. And so when that happens, sometimes it's helpful to reach out and ask for help, or like, you grab a spot on the calendar and just like get that deeper dive, figure out what's blocking you from moving forward and getting those things out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really valuable. And whether it's meditation or whether it's a walk in the park or whatever it is that you do, I think having time for your mind to be quiet as well as your body not to be active is so important, because it's in those spaces sometimes where you get those epiphanies, where you get those realizations and clarity on things that maybe you were struggling with when you were actively trying to figure it out. It's funny that you mentioned the sprints in software, because I was in sales when I was younger, and I used to always laugh to my wife about this, because our boss, we would have these calls, and it would be whatever it is. Say it's March 27th. We're coming around on the end of the month. We just got to push really hard. We got to finish this month really, really strong. And I would always laugh, because I'd say, on April 1st, we're going to have another call, and it's going to be, we got a new month. We just got to really start pushing hard. We got to start this month off better than we start. It gets to a point where it loses any meaning, because it's all just push. There's never once one conversation or one conference call where he said, you know what, guys, you kicked butt this month. Why don't you take a couple days, chill out, go golfing, whatever else, do whatever you want to do, and then come back to the office refreshed, and we'll have another killer month. Never. Right. It was always, we pushed hard, now we got to push even harder. And so it was just keep ratcheting up the pressure. And you can only do that so long until people crash. I mean, it makes logical sense when you step back and you think about it, because it makes no sense to constantly trying to be pushing and moving forward like that. But unfortunately, in a competitive cultures, that's oftentimes what we're taught to believe, and what we're conditioned to work like, because the bosses are under pressure, everyone's under pressure, and on down it goes. So So you have the free cheat sheet. You have some other products and services. Where can we find your programs, your services, and other stuff that you have to offer?
Absolutely. So you can find me at serenesuccess.net. And the cheat sheet is at serenesuccess.net/pod, P-O-D for podcast.
Okay.
And yeah, you can get it there, download it, and it'll be all yours.
Awesome. So if we circle back for a minute about the authenticity issue, in terms of stress or burnout, if somebody said, okay, I buy into the idea, but how do I'm uncomfortable or I don't really know the process of trying to figure out what I want. Are there any clues or hints that you can give for somebody to sort of start that discovery process?
Yes. Okay. I'll give a really simple exercise that you can do, and that's to pay attention to your energy levels. So maybe look at your calendar for the week, and you can color code what's on your calendar, and give one color for energy draining, things that you know just suck the soul out of you, that you hate doing, and another color for things that are energizing or kind of fill you up. And see what your calendar looks like. Like, is it 80% soul sucking? And that'll kind of give you some clues. Like if you have no idea where you're starting at, that's like a really easy, very tactical thing that you can do to start listening to your gut. Because what you're doing is you're acknowledging these activities drain me. I mean, just even saying that out loud, looking at your calendar and acknowledging that that's happening is huge. And as you start to notice more and more what gives you energy, what takes it away, you'll become more in tune with your gut. You'll be more in tune with what is authentic for you. And it's a good first step to getting to where you want to go.
I love the idea of the awareness because I think so many of us get stuck in a routine or a cycle. We're just doing. And so we aren't evaluating, we aren't thinking, we aren't assessing anything. It reminds me, I don't know if I'm dating myself a little bit, but I don't know if you saw the movie Parenthood with Steve Martin, and it's from like the 1980s or whatever, but there's one scene in it where he's overwhelmed. He's got kids and one of them has a problem at school. The stuff at work isn't going well. He's just being pulled in 100 different ways all at once. And he looks up and he says, my whole life is have to, and I'm thinking to myself, it really epitomizes, I think, the way some people go about their daily routine. And if that's the way you feel, it's really important to step back from that, understand it doesn't have to be that way, assess, evaluate, and be confident and comfortable saying no to things that are limiting things that are going to drain all of your energy, because we don't have to be everything to everyone all the time. We just don't. So
absolutely. I think a good thing to keep in mind for your listeners is like, it can seem scary to let off the gas or like to start saying no or to make that white space in your life like you're talking about. But here's the thing, when you do that, you actually accelerate your results. You will get where you want to go faster.
Yeah, which
seems counterintuitive, but true.
It does. It seems counterintuitive, but yeah, it's so funny. I mean, I know somebody said like meditate 15 minutes in the morning before you start your day, you'll be twice as more productive. And the average person would think, well, geez, but if I'm meditating, I'm not working, so I'm just sitting there doing nothing. And yet, ironically, if you have that clarity and that focus when you start off, the idea is you can get more done easier, faster, and more effectively. So I think that's great advice. So my last question that I always have to ask is, what's your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
Don't forget that you are the linchpin of your life, of your business, and investing in yourself will get you exponential returns in your business, in your family, in your relationships, and in your health. So don't put yourself on the bottom of the list.
That's great advice. And I think a lot of us do it just by default. We feel like everything else is more important, and it's not the right way to go about it. If we were our own asset in our own business and we looked at ourselves that way, we wouldn't treat ourselves as badly as we do. So great advice. Right. So with that, it's just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you again, Hannah, so much for sharing all of your insights and great tips with us. Visit Serene Success, SereneSuccess.net/pod to get your free cheat sheet that shows you how to cut your working hours by 20% with 7 principles for slashing your working hours, being fully present, and enjoying the success you've created in your life. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, remember, no matter what you want from your business or your life, don't compromise. optYOUmize.